Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining the National Civic League's July All-America City Award Promising Practices webinar. We're focusing on youth councils and how they are harnessing the power of engaged youth. My name is Rebecca Trout, and I am the director of the All-America City Award program, as well as the DC office here at the National Civic League. The National Civic League's been around for over 125 years at this point. We really are focused on advancing civic engagement to create more equitable and thriving communities. We do this through a number of our programs, one of which is our flagship program, the All-America City Award, which was really started to celebrate and recognize communities who are doing the work of community civic engagement at a really high level. So we use our annual awards event to celebrate those communities, to lift them up, and then we use this webinar series as well as some of our other communication mechanisms to really share those promising practices, as we call them, engagement efforts across the country. So that is what we will be doing here today. You'll be hearing from two of our previous, actually really previous, All-America City Award winners. Before we dive into today's topic, I just want to give a quick overview and shout out to our 2023 All-America City Award winners, who you'll see on your screen. All of our finalists joined us in Denver last month. It was our first in-person All-America City Award in over 3 years, and it was just so nice to have the spirit and energy of all of our finalist communities that they were presenting their efforts on youth civic engagement, and particularly projects and programs that are engaging youth in civic life. They joined us for a weekend in Denver. They heard keynote speeches, participated in workshops and peer learning environments, and then, of course, they had their presentations to our jury of civic engagement experts. And then after the end of the wedding, after the end of the weekend, we had our jury select the 10 winners who you're seeing on your screen here, all of which are doing some really amazing and innovative work to engage their youth in civic life. So you can go to our website and read more about each of them, and even watch their in-person presentation to our jury to learn about some of their efforts. And then just a quick plug, if you didn't participate last year but would like to this year, in 2024, we're going to be focusing on strengthening democracy through local action and innovation. We're right at the beginning of our program year right now, so you can see all of the important dates that are coming. The application's not due until February, but I am assuming that all of the speakers on this call would agree that the earlier you start the process, the easier it's going to be for you. So encourage you to start thinking about what projects you might include in an application. I will also have an informational webinar coming up in September to learn more about the application and just to answer some of the questions. But what we are here for today is a conversation about youth councils. This was a really hot topic of conversation at last month's event. And so we thought it would be a great idea to give you 3 examples of local youth councils and sort of what makes them successful, the kind of projects they're working on, and some tips if you're looking to either start or strengthen a youth council in your own community. So we will be hearing first from Tanya Russell, who heads up the City of Brighton, Colorado's Youth Council. Then we will be joined by the city manager of Gonzales, California, Carmen Gill. Gonzales was a winner of this year's All-America City Award program, and their youth council was heavily featured in their application. And then last but not least, we're joined by Olivia Cody, who will be providing our youth perspective. She is a young leader in Fayetteville, North Carolina, involved locally and at the state level, and was recognized for these efforts through our John Parr Youth Leadership Award that was given out at this year's event. So they have an exciting agenda to share with you, and you'll learn a lot. Just a couple of the housekeeping items before we get started. You are all muted right now. We do ask that you remain so until the end, when we will have about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. Feel free to insert your questions into the chat as we go along. You can also, if you want to, go ahead and introduce yourself, where you're joining us from. If you want to give us a little bit of background on whether or not you have a youth council, or kind of what you're looking to get out of this webinar, you can use the chat feature for that as well. You'll notice that we are recording. The recording, as well as these slides, will be emailed out to the email address that you registered under. So that will be coming either later this afternoon or early tomorrow. And with that, I'm excited to hand it off to our first speaker. Tanya Russell is joining us from Brighton, Colorado. Tanya?
Thanks, Rebecca. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Okay. I don't.
If you just the bottom right-hand corner, you can make that full slide. That works as well. That button works too.
There we go. Thank you for your patience. Thanks, Rebecca, and thank you to the National Civic League for covering this important topic. I'm Tanya Russell. I'm the manager of youth services for the city of Brighton. Before I talk about the Brighton Youth Commission, I just wanted to mention that the Brighton Youth Commission is housed in the city's Office of Youth Services. So the Youth Services Department does a number of initiatives serving young people in the community, including a 2-day youth leadership conference for young people from all around the state of Colorado, Growing Grads Initiative, which is a number of different programs working to get young people prepared for college and career readiness. And the Adams County Mayors and Commissioners Youth Award is a program where we recognize young people who have faced adversity and still continue to serve their community. I mention those because oftentimes what happens for young people in our community is they'll start in one of our programs and then they'll just kind of naturally get interest in the other programs, so they kind of cycle through all. So I feel really fortunate to be able to offer so many programs that we can kind of, if one doesn't work for a young person, then another one works for a young person. So the Brighton Youth Commission was started back in 2005. Before I got here, they started using the platform for youth education and families put forward by the National League of Cities, focusing on youth engagement. At the time, the city created a master plan outlining a number of initiatives serving young people. And unfortunately, the economy crashed, so a lot of that stuff didn't move forward right away, but the Brighton Youth Commission really took off from the very beginning and has stayed consistent since then. A little bit about how the Brighton Youth Commission operates. First, young people go through a pretty stringent interview process. Current youth commissioners interview oncoming youth commissioners. A little bit about what they're looking for. They're looking for obviously leadership skills, but different types of leadership skills, so front seat leaders and back seat leaders. But we also really pride ourselves on creating a diverse commission that's representative of the youth voice. So when I first came to the city, the youth commission really was the top performing top academically performing students from the local high schools. And while we really appreciate those young people's voice on our commission, that's not representative of all the young people in Brighton. So we've really worked hard to create a situation where there's a number of different young people. We currently have 4 schools, so we recruit from all 4 of the high schools. It's a full day interview process. So they usually start by doing some team building activities, and they have lunch together, and then they do some one-on-one questions. The commissioners that are interviewing are all trained ahead of time, kind of like what to look for and how to gauge leadership skills and how to look for a diverse population of young people. After young people are accepted onto the commission, we meet twice a month. It's important that we provide food at those meetings. Sometimes that's the hook that really gets them there. And the meetings are run by an executive team of officers. So we have a chair, a vice chair, a public relations officer, a secretary, and a historian. Those officers work with myself and my staff to set the agenda, but then they're really responsible for leading the meeting. The meeting's usually structured in a way that we have young people and adults on our commission. Of the adults, we have at-large community members, but then we also have appointed members. So we have an unappointed school district representative and an appointed city council representative. And then we also have spots for young people to sit on city boards. So we start with reports. Each of those appointed members give their report out. Then we go through the agenda, and we always try to do some sort of team building and leadership development at the meetings as well. One of the Youth Commission's signature projects is called Speak Week. SPEAK stands for Suicide Prevention, Education, Awareness, and Knowledge. And this project started back in 2012. We had an unfortunate event where a senior at our local high school died by suicide. And I tell this story all the time because it's so near and dear to our hearts, but I checked on the Youth Commission just to make sure that they were okay and voice like, hey, if you guys aren't doing okay, you need to seek help or guidance. Like you could reach out to me or your parents or your counselors, and just don't let it go like untalked about. That night in 2012, they said, we're not okay, not in the way that we feel like we're going to hurt ourselves, but we want to do something to show that like make sure this doesn't happen in our community again and work to prevent it. So I said, okay, what does that look like? And they said, we want to do a week-long worth of education in our local schools, and we want to follow that by a 5K walk. And at the time, I told them that is a terrible idea and I'm out for that. And I said that for a couple different reasons. One, I know that school districts are overworked and have so many things to do. And so it can be hard to get programming in to schools, hard to partner. I don't know what just happened. It's okay. And two, I'm not an event planner by nature, and I just couldn't envision how to make this happen with the small group that was there. But they really pushed back on me. Part of what the Youth Commission focuses on is youth adult partnerships. So really this idea that I have knowledge and an expert in some areas, and they have knowledge and expert in some areas, and the true magic happens when we come together. So I said, Tanya, what about youth adult partnerships? We want to make this happen. So we worked through the logistics that first night, and I ended up giving them $300 to start the project, and they made it happen. So the first year Speak took place in 2 schools, our 2 local high schools, and they wrapped it up with a 5K walk. When I say it takes place in schools, they planned activities all geared around breaking down the stigmas surrounding mental health, exploring the root causes of suicide, and training people on warning signs and how to get help for suicide. And then we had around 200 people at the walk. Fast forward, we wrapped up our 2023 Speak Week in May. We were in 13 schools, and the walk has continued to grow and be strong every year. It's been an interesting journey in that we started in high schools, and much to our surprise, after we were in the high schools for a couple of years, the middle school said, hey, we really like this program. Would you consider doing it in middle schools? So the Youth Commission started working in middle schools. And then a few years after that, the elementary school said, well, 5th grade is pretty much 6th grade. So would you be interested in starting in 5th grade? So now really a school has the opportunity to opt in, opt out of Speak, opt in and opt out of all of the activities, whichever are most age appropriate for their young people. A huge component of this Speak Week and what's made it successful is young people learning how to raise funds to support their own project. So since 2012, they've raised well over $100,000 to support their own project through sponsorships, community support, donations, and grants. one of the things that I think about often when I think about authentically engaging youth, whether it's in Speak Week or any program the Brighton Youth Commission does, is if you're going to teach a bear how to dance, you need to dance when it's ready to dance. So Speak is a really good example of that. I had taught them the power of youth adult partnerships and running through authentic youth engagement. Once I had taught them the leadership skills and confidence they needed to do that, when they wanted to do a project, I needed to do my best to act on that. I think that that's super important, especially when talking about this, because it is really easy to tokenize youth voice and think that we want youth voice. But then when they truly do voice an opinion, it's easy to say, yeah, we meant we want your voice, but not really so much in that. A couple of things that come up often is anytime that you're working in municipal government or event planning, there's so many rules and so many procedures. So something that I work really hard to do as a best practice is not to just stand up and talk and talk and talk and talk, or give documents for them to read. All the trainings that we do, we pressure ourselves to be really engaging and hands-on learning. So just one example of that is the Youth Commission. One of the things that keeps us together is a strong attendance policy. Originally, when we first started, it was easy for me to say, here's the attendance policy and here's how it needs to happen and here's the consequences. And what we found is that we continue to have a number of attendance policies. What helped that is sitting down through a session of strategic planning and asking them what they wanted their attendance policy to be. And through that, not only did they come up with an attendance policy that made sense for them, it was easier for them to keep themselves and their teammates accountable. When I talk about creative learning, it's never just handing out the papers and talking, as I mentioned. So it gets wild and crazy. Oftentimes, I know that I'm thankful to have a team that I will say, hey guys, why don't we take them to a thrift shop and have them build a time machine, a partnership machine, talking about how to be better partners. And people are kind of like, well, what do you mean? So that is that there's buy-in all the time from not only my team, and we hold all of us accountable for being creative and engaging. So these are just a couple of examples. As I mentioned, the partnership machine, we were having some struggles communicating with each other on the commission, but also communicating with outside entities. So each team was given $20 and they were tasked with building a machine that would fix any partnership problems that anybody has, with the caveat that all the shopping had to be done at the local thrift shop. So that's just an example, a picture of what that looked like. Oftentimes I'm asked about what my piece of advice would be for starting youth commissions or maintaining youth commissions. And I think something that's been really helpful for the Brighton Youth Commission is to find champions both within the city and in the community. It's hard work and not everybody sees the value in youth voice immediately. But once people are able to engage and really see the value that it adds to both young people and the community and the municipality and local businesses, it's really easy to get the train rolling. So I do this by trying to engage young people in every single opportunity that I can out in the community and in the city. So partnering with city council and having them meet regularly, having my youth commission have the opportunity to talk regularly at city council meetings, but also other collaborations such as the local chamber of commerce and the school district. So that in the case that things get tough and people don't understand the value of youth voice, there's champions that can advocate for them and for us as well. That's all I have about my youth commission. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Carmen now.
Thank you so much, Tanya. And now Carmen will start sharing her screen. Thanks, Carmen.
Let me go ahead and share. There we go. Hoping you can see that okay.
Looks
Yes.
great.
All right, perfect. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Carmen Gill, City Manager for the City of Gonzales, California. I'm super excited that you are all interested in youth commissions, and I'm going to share specifically examples about example of our commission, our youth commission, and how they engaged around mental health, a project that continues to generate interest locally and afar, and has really not only helped us win the All-American City Award this last year, but also has put the Youth Commission in the newspapers all throughout California. So I'm excited to share with you some of the structure of the Gonzales Youth Commission, how we got here, and then specifically this mental health project they've been working on for the last few years. So the Gonzales Youth Council started as an idea between the City of Gonzales and the Gonzales Unified School District. The idea really initiated back in 2006. Back then, the city manager and superintendent agreed to make a formal commitment to establishing a youth council that did include funding for it. It was established in 2014 when both the city council and the school board approved funding to bring on advisors to the youth council to help form the youth council. And the first one was established formally in 2015. The model has not only been recognized here locally, but also nationally. And the youth council members have actually supported some of our other local jurisdictions in establishing their own youth councils. So it's really neat to see them sharing their lessons learned and best practices across our region. In terms of a structure, I just shared that our youth council is supported by 2 advisors. And we are also now establishing more of a peer-to-peer model. We are having previous youth commissioners come in and actually do some of the teachings and learnings around youth development. It's really neat to see them actually teach others that are now in the shoes that they used to sit in. And so that's been one of the methods that we've really wanted to harness around these last few years. Our youth council is comprised of 2 to 3 youth commissioners. And like our previous speaker, they also go through a rigorous interview process. They're usually recommended by the previous youth commissioners of the previous year. And then they will do an application, formally apply, and they will go through 2 rounds of interviews at least. They'll interview with their own peers, but they'll also interview with the school superintendent and the city manager. Then two are usually chosen. Sometimes it's 3 because they're just, you know, so great that we are able to extend it to 3. They go through a summer fellowship, a 7-week paid fellowship where they really dive into the various city departments. They dive into how the school district works. So they're here 8 to 5 or so, following around our directors, really understanding the team dynamics, how the fire department works, how public works works, et cetera. And so that is the paid time and learning development process for them. They're currently here getting geared up for the next year or so. We're very excited about that. And typically we have about anywhere between 12 to 16 youth that are part of the youth council. Again, with the two to 3 youth commissioners who are really the liaisons between the 2 entities, the school district and the city, and then the rest of their youth, the youth that sit on the council. Specifically, I'm going to talk about the mental health project. What typically happens is the council itself will go through a few training sessions early on, and then they will begin to identify projects or issue areas that are of interest to them. We call these action project areas. And so they will begin to narrow those priorities or areas of interest. Where there is most traction is really the ones that they will take on. And so, for example, you know, for a few years now, we've had mental health being one of the priority areas. This year and the last year has also been school and city beautification, for example. But mental health has been one that has been ongoing for a few years. Priorities can change year to year depending on who sits on the council and what their interests and abilities are. One of the things that our adult allies and our adult advisors really have to harness in is really staying true to the fact that this is a youth-led program, and they determine what issue areas they want to take on, because they oftentimes get calls of, hey, can the youth participate in this? Can the youth participate in that? And you know, it is the job of the allies to also make sure that they are not being pulled in all different directions, but they're staying focused and really harnessing into the prioritized projects. Goes back to that authentic youth engagement and you know, projects led by them so that they're not pulled all over. In early 2020, the GYC was looking to conduct some kind of research project. They identified mental health as an issue because they were running into friends who were having, you know, problems, didn't know who to turn to, were distressed, overwhelmed, etc. And they realized there was a gap in mental health resources, and specifically at the school district, but also, you know, just in the community. Initially, they had a plan to do tabling and to do a survey and to, you know, talk to people and do an in-person survey. And that's when the pandemic hit. So of course, the pandemic changed things in terms of the plans that the council had. However, it really put mental health even more at the forefront, because then they were concerned about, okay, now we have isolation. Now we have folks that aren't, you know, seeing their friends at school. So what does that mean for folks who were already struggling with mental health? So they decided to really continue to make that a priority. And at the same time, we were establishing a partnership with California State University, Monterey Bay. Dr. Lavelle, who is a psychologist, got to know our Gonzales Youth Council and was really interested in the mental health aspect, and began to partner with the GYC to conduct a youth participatory action research project all around mental health, which was great because then we had the actual expertise at the table. And so they collectively developed a survey tool. We worked with their team of research students to modify questions, ensure that all the data we were looking for was really being captured through the questions. It was through a mixed method approach that included both qualitative and quantitative questions. And the survey was open for a month. The youth were able to send out the survey via email because this is when the initial survey was when we were still distance learning. But surprisingly, they received 374 responses, which was remarkable because a lot of the times the school district won't even get that much back. So the fact that they were able to get a good number of surveys back was a really great thing for our data. 92.4% of the respondents were Latino or Latina or Hispanic from the Hispanic community, as 90% of our population is typically Hispanic. And then the results weren't surprising, but they definitely validated and were quite alarming in terms of where folks' mental state was. This is one of the quotes that came out of the survey. I don't really have anyone to help besides my mom, and she's always at work. So basically doing things on my own. Also, my brother's here and my mom's at work, so I have to help him with all his stuff. It's kind of stressful, and because of that, because I'm going through family issues. So we saw some of these common themes throughout the survey that definitely spoke to the need for more resources and more support, and really highlighted some issues like the fact that we saw a lot more siblings taking care of their younger brothers and sisters during the pandemic, the fact that childcare was an issue, and families were stressed, and all these other things just compiled on top of each other. The youth went on and worked again with our CSUMB partners to create an infographic. So here's the image of the infographic they put together. And they presented these findings to the local school board, to the city council, to the youth commission, to various bodies, and gained a lot of interest in the work that they had done. They actually even were fortunate to be published in the Journal of School Psychology. through this process. So it's been a pretty neat project that they've engaged in that continues to, again, generate media attention and support. And they have continued to advocate for mental health supports. In 2022, they realized, the work is not over. Mental health is still an issue. And so they wanted to conduct a follow-up study to assess where things were at post-pandemic. This time, they just completed it earlier this year, and this time 243 students responded. And although results were a little bit better, there was still 34.6% of students that said they were still unlikely to seek support due to confidentiality and privacy issues. So to us, that means, we have to do more to make students feel comfortable about going out and seeking their local counselors, their local social supports, etc. And this was one quote that I thought was interesting. One of the students that responded to the survey thought, it would be easier if we all were required to at least have one appointment with a mental health counselor. So that way they can meet them, they can be introduced to them, and that stigma could be reduced significantly, and then they'll feel more comfortable seeking supports. The GYC also just recently held a mental health forum in May. And they're continuing to look at mental health as one of the priorities, again, because they feel like the work's not done. They're also beginning to lift up and look for ways to support parents to support their students around mental health, which is another area that they're diving in and looking at and seeing if that's something that they can impact, and how do they go about doing that, developing some strategies. So in terms of where we're at for this year, the commissioners have been selected. This year we will have 3 commissioners. You have 2 pictured here that actually got to go to the All-American City Award competition. We have Lisette Flores, who's not pictured, but she will also join as our youth commissioner. As I mentioned, they're going through their fellowship, summer fellowship right now, learning as much as they can, not only about the different structures, but also how to get engaged and what the right time to talk about budget. They're learning how things work both at the city and the school district, and they will start recruiting their cohort and their council as soon as they finish up in a week or so. And that recruitment process will go through mid-August, which is when shortly after we start school here, and they'll sit there in next year's youth council at the beginning of September. So we're kind of in the mix of that, but that's kind of the way our youth council works. And again, they take on multiple projects. They could take on between 3 to 4 projects a year, again, depending on where the energy lies and who wants to do what type of work. But it's super important for us to have established advisors that can continue to support them throughout the process, and that can ensure that their voice and their engagement is authentic. So I didn't mention, they actually have, I might have skipped a slide. They actually have a seat at the city council. So they attend all our city council meetings and are actually part of the agendas, as well as the school district board meetings. So they're always intentionally being connected to our elected officials so that they can listen to youth concerns, they're able to bring in youth ideas, etc. And their voice truly does matter in this community because they've been established as part of the systems here. So anyway, that's all I have for today, and I'd be happy to answer questions at the end of the presentation. And I'm going to pass it on to Olivia.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Let me just share my screen. Okay, there we go. We're golden. So yes, hello, everyone. My name is Olivia Cody, and I'm a member of the Fayetteville Cumberland Youth Council. And today I'll be talking to you all about the work we do, our structure, and also a couple of projects that we are very proud of that show the importance of civic engagement within our community. My click's gonna work. There we go. So what is FCYC? The Fayetteville Cumberland Youth Council's mission is to serve as the voice of the youth for the city. It's a youth-led organization in the Fayetteville Cumberland area, focusing on the betterment and promotion of our community. We are the cross-generational link and participate in service projects and social events to promote character building and leadership development. But if someone ever asked me who I think FCYC is, I tell them that we are change makers and advocates and volunteers. You can see my favorite picture is probably the middle one. This is us attending a county commissioners meeting. We also attend city council meetings every month, and they know our faces very, very well, where we get to share the heart of the youth and what we're working on and what we like to see them work on, and just keep fostering those relationships. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. So a little bit about me. I am an incoming freshman at Winston-Salem State University. I am the middle out of 3 girls. My sisters are my very best friends. I have lived in Fayetteville for the past 12 years. I call this place home, has a very special place in my heart. I have formerly served as North Carolina State Youth Council Chair, and probably the reason I'm here talking to you all today, I was the recipient of this year's John Parr Youth Leadership Award from the American National Civic League. So my journey in FCYC did begin in 2020. So yes, the COVID era, which means everything that I was first exposed to through FCYC was done completely through Zoom and done virtually. However, I feel like I had the most amazing virtual experience you can have with the Youth Council. We still hosted all of our meetings online. We actually won the award for most creative virtual service project that year for one of our projects, Adopt a Teen and Jingle Tree, which just a little teaser about that. It's a project where we mimic the angel tree, but all of the gifts that you can purchase are for teenagers instead of younger children, because those are the angels that kind of get left on the tree most times. And we did that completely virtually. I was so happy to be a part of that. But what really drew me to FCYC was the role that teenagers took in conducting the meeting. So if you walk into our office, you'll see that the teenagers are calling the meeting to order and conducting meetings and taking notes. And our advisor is in the room, because it's important to have an adult in the room with you, but our advisor just takes a step back and lets us run the meetings because we've been trained to do so. And so following 2020, so 2021 era, I was invited to join the executive board. So that's a little bit about our structure here at FCYC. We do have an executive board, like most organizations, that are responsible for casting the vision and setting the expectations for our year. And that way we kind of know what our goals are going into every year. And so I was able to sit on the executive board for 2 years, and I ran for the State Youth Council, North Carolina State Youth Council Vice Chair. In 2021, I won that position. And then I also was appointed as North Carolina State Youth Council Chair in 2022. So I just finished up my term with them. So an inside look at FCYC. So we are open to 10th, 11th, and 12th graders from public, private, and homeschool organizations. Although we do not have a specific application, because one thing we've learned that sometimes the word application can scare teenagers. I am teenagers. We use a membership questionnaire instead to get to know our students better and help assign them their committee. So these are the people that we'll be working with closely in their smaller groups to help make change and focusing on different areas in our community. So FCYC also works closely with our principals and our guidance counselors who may know of students that are interested in the work. And so these principals will be like, hey, I have this person in mind that would benefit with FCYC. Here's their information, or they'll give the student their information. And all of our students that are a part do get recommendations from their principals, and they also do go through a slight interview process. We do speak to them one-on-one at our interest meeting and kind of get a feel out for them, but we try to keep our membership pretty open so that no one feels scared from becoming a part. We do not have a GPA requirement. We do not have a prerequisite requirement. You don't have to sit on SGA to be a part. You just have to be willing to serve your community. My clicker working, there we go. And so training or onboarding wise, one of the most important steps of our membership process, because we do still have one of those, is attending our new member orientation. So this is basically a crash course in all things FCYC. This is where they learn our values and our goals. And it pretty much equips our students to answer the question, okay, what is the Fayetteville Cumberland Youth Council? What do y'all do? And so they learn how to pitch the Fayetteville Cumberland Youth Council, how to explain the work we do, how to kind of see where our focuses are, where our focuses aren't. They get to learn about us, about the relationships we have with our city council and county commissioners and our organizations and businesses. and things like that. So when this whole membership process is over, we start the intake process in August. That's when we have our interest meeting. And this is when they can just come in and learn about us. Think like an open house at your school. They learn about what we do. And then following that is when we have new member orientation. And then finally they get their letter saying you've been accepted to the Fayetteville Cumberland Youth Council. And I do see this as part of an application process, because in between the time we start taking members and by the time they're officially members of FCYC, we do see a couple people fall out, and that's okay because it might not be for them. But that way we get to know who's serious about joining, who may not be interested after all, and things like that. So civic engagement, this is one of the things that we are very, very big about. We value our community relationships with city council and county commissioners, our military. All of that is really important to us because it's something, it leads to us having good relationships and getting better advantages when it comes to our community service projects. We can speak to them about getting the word out as well. We do this by planning community service projects. We're known throughout the area as being an organization committed to creating long-lasting change. We get emails all the time like, hey, can you guys help us with this? We need volunteers for that. We would love to hear FCYC come speak at this. And that's because we're known for being a really positive influence, not only on our generation, but just on our community as a whole. And that's something that we do by also speaking to our city council, by showing them where our hearts are at and what we want to see. And whenever it comes time to make a change that might impact teenagers, they come and speak to us, hey, what does FCYC think about this? Because we have such a broad range of students in our youth council. There we go. And so our voices are being heard on a local, state, and national level. And I want to start with state representation. So we have held over 10 elected youth positions on the state level in the past 8 years. That might not sound like a lot, but that means since we've been chartered in 2014, we have held a position almost every year since then on the state level. And there's only 4 positions on that board. And so just in case you don't know, the State Youth Council is what we are chartered through. And that means that they provide resources and conferences that we can attend and meet with other youth councils in our in our state, in our state, to let them know what we're doing back home and what they're doing on a state level. We collaborate to do statewide service projects, as well as just have professional development and events like that throughout the year. So I served on the State Youth Council for 2 years as vice chair and then chair. And with that, I got to travel across the state, meeting with other youth councils, speaking to them about the work they're doing, getting inspired for some of the work we can do back home, and vice versa. But we also host an event at the end of the year called Spring Convention. And this is when we hand out awards to our youth councils recognizing the work they've done. And so we have won the most creative, innovative council project for multiple of our service projects. And then we've also been recognized as the most outstanding youth council 6 times, 5 times being consecutively. This is a picture of us at one of the Spring Convention events where we did win Most Outstanding Youth Council. Like I said before, we've won that award 5 times in a row since 2018, and we won it 1 time before then. And so nationally speaking, how our voices are being heard, we attend annual conferences in Washington, D.C. FCYC has been represented on the national level twice since its charter by holding 1 of 4 youth positions in the nation on National League of Cities Youth Education and Families Board. That means that every year they open up applications for students to become a part of the Youth Education and Families Board with National League of Cities. And that is where they provide resources for cities that may be interested in sharing what teenagers may be interested about and how to engage their youth civically. And they invite 4 teenagers to sit on that from across the nation. And we have had that spot 2 times in the past 4 years. And so now we're going to get into a project I was asked to talk about, the Period Project, which is something that garnered a lot of attention that I did not expect whenever I went to apply for the John Parr Youth Leadership Award. And so the Period Project is an initiative by the Fayetteville Cumberland Youth Council to create a way to collect menstrual products in an effort to lessen the effect of period poverty in the Cumberland County area. And so this idea, I could talk about this till I'm blue in the face. We're gonna try to keep it really short. Everything we do at FCYC is youth-led. it's youth inspired, which means that oftentimes our community service projects and also our work that we do is all led by youth because a youth thought of it. So in this case, it was a teenager that shared their frustration with one time going to the main office to get at her school to get menstrual care items like pads and tampons, and it was just subpar quality equipment that they gave her, which is not their fault. That's just what they're given from higher powers, and that's what they have to hand out to their students. And the student was very upset. They just kept saying, like, Olivia, this is not working, this is not comfortable, da da da. And so we kind of went to the drawing board and we were like, okay, what's the one thing we wanted to accomplish if we were going to do something about this problem? And the thing we came up was that we want to collect enough stuff so that every school in Cumberland County can have access to quality care items. So quality pads, tampons, liners, everything like that. And so we got started working, and we created a list of 8 items that are proven to make the menstrual care experience easier. So not just pads, tampons, liners, we also got dark chocolate and Midol and peppermint tea and new underwear and skin safe wipes. We posted this on our social media. I'm about to show you all the graphic we posted, and placed donation boxes among our small businesses downtown and also our schools so that those that are privileged enough to have access to quality care items can donate. I'm clicking, there we go. Yeah, so this is the stuff that we posted on our Instagram. We let it run from March 1st to March 31st. That was intentional because that is Women's History Month. There we go. March is Women's History Month. So we feel like it was the perfect time to kind of highlight this unique issue that we're facing. And the response was amazing. We had Amazon packages coming into our office full of pads and tampons. I had my phone ringing from people that were asking to donate. Our boxes from our schools came back full, which we were very excited for. And we went on to apply with the State Youth Council for the most creative, innovative council project award with the Period Project, and we did win that award, which is recognized on the state level. And so the impact of the Period Project, the year it launched, we collected enough supplies, donate items to all of Cumberland County's public schools, which that was our base goal. Y'all heard me say that earlier. That's all we wanted to do, was donate back to our schools. But once we did that, we realized that we had enough supplies to still donate to group homes and domestic violence shelters as well in our city and surrounding areas. But I feel like the thing that impacted, or I said us, but impacted me the most for sure, was that following year, we shared this project on the national level at National League of Cities. And we talked about the work we were doing then. And then the year after that, I was at a National League of Cities conference and I was speaking to a youth council, and they had actually mimicked our project and created their own version of it called the Hygiene Initiative, which means they took it to the national level. It says state right there, I made a mistake, but they took it to the national level, which means that now a form of the Period Project is going on across the nation. And so next up, I want to talk about my experience with FCYC, and that's really big for me, connections. I feel like working with FCYC has taught me to network and form genuine connections with anyone that I meet, the people that I come across, whether it's a short conversation or a long extensive conversation about the meaning of life. I am just able to talk to anyone about anything and make genuine connections in what they're doing. It's also taught me how to effectively communicate and connect with an audience like I'm doing now. I hope I'm connecting with you all at some point. And it's really just taught me how to be a powerful speaker. And then also creativity wise, being at FCYC has taught me that you have to find creative solutions to unique problems, like with the Period Project. I would have never even imagined that would be an issue, but it turns out it was, and we were able to find a unique solution to that problem. FCYC has taught me how to be creative in my leadership, because no two leaders are the same. No two people are the same. The way we lead is going to change, and that's all okay. You just have to be comfortable with finding what type of leader you are. And so connections and creativity has led to me being an effective leader. Okay, so my closing advice to people wanting to start a youth council: do not, and I feel like I cannot say this loud enough, do not reinvent the wheel. If you, speaking with other councils who have experience in this field, preferably in your own state, is a great way to start. One thing that we learned going into rechartering our youth council, which was long before I was even a part of it in 2014, was that there's actually the groundwork already laid, and we just got to build on top of that. And so don't start trying to do your own thing when you can go speak to people that have knowledge of similar programs in your area, to partner with, to find out about their experience and go from there. I missed one. There we go. My closing advice for those that maybe wanting to start a youth council: remember who this is for. I'm pretty sure I heard Carmen say it earlier, was that you want to remember who it's for, and that your youth council needs to be youth led. So your intentions behind it have to stay pure in that sense. You're not telling them what to do, but you want to be committed to creating a safe space for you to be able to run things. That does not mean let them go crazy. We do need a little bit of guidance, but sometimes you need to be okay being a guider and not always a leader. You know, and so it's not enough to always give teenagers a seat at the table. You need to be prepared to give them room to speak and act. And sometimes the things they say might be a little hard to hear, and we're not saying it from a point of anger just to spite you, but we're saying it from a point of, this is what we've been seeing for so long, this is what we want to see fixed. So kind of have an open mind about what we may say, what we may want to see happen, and just check your intentions behind how you're interpreting it. My closing advice to youth that may be getting involved in a youth council or just getting involved in your program, in a youth program period: it's okay to be scared, because civic proceedings and community involvement has not always been open to teenagers or younger generations. We've seen that for years and years and years before now. We'll probably see it for years and years after. But getting involved in this environment can seem scary. You're not alone. There have been people that went before you and did it. There will be people that come after you and did it, and you'll be able to figure it all out. Do not allow one negative experience to influence your entire outlook. Sometimes we go into a room and you may have a seat at the table, but then they don't want to hear what you have to say. And that's sad, and that's not fun, but that shouldn't affect how you use your voice. And so then remember that you want to try to find an organization when you're first starting out that does have positive relationships with teenagers. No, like, it's pointless when you're just getting started to go find the most hostile place for teenagers in the world. I'm gonna go there. No, you want to find somewhere where you're going to be seen and valued and trained. And my last piece of advice, and I always say this to any underclassmen that I come across now, is that do not stay in your bubble with school and athletics. It is super easy to allow school to become your entire community involvement. And then you go to write your resume and you realize that everything you're doing is all done at the same place. And that doesn't really breed for a well-rounded person or a well-rounded resume. So going into the new year, I want to challenge teenagers or parents that may be on the call to get involved in one extracurricular from outside of school to be a part of, whether that is a youth council or a club or another youth-focused organization, or maybe not a youth-focused organization, but something that you're passionate about, just so you can have that extra bit of exposure to the world. So like I said, it's really important to stay in contact and connect with people and talk to them all about what you're doing, and also if you're willing to start a youth council. And so here's some contact information that I think is very valuable to have: our Instagram, our Facebook, and our email if you want to speak to FCYC about the work that we do, or if we can send you some resources or literature about starting your own youth council, more than happy to do that. And also I had to plug my Instagram. I am Gen Z, and also my contact information, my email. But if it's something that I feel like FCYC can answer, I will just forward that email to that first email. So you may want to just put both of us on there. And I do believe this will be sent out, so you can look at all this. Again, thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Olivia and Tanya and Carmen. I really appreciate your time and sharing your experiences and expertise. We've got a couple of suggestions for starting youth councils. We heard about being authentic and having pure intentions, being ready to allow youth to lead once you teach them how to do so, finding champions, and not being scared to start. So thank you for those nuggets. Probably have time for a question or two. So feel free, if you have a question, to either unmute yourself and ask our presenters directly, or you can type that into the chat as well. So a question that I am curious about is, how do you ensure, youth engagement after someone has cycled off of a youth council? So feel free to chime in if there are opportunities for young people to kind of get involved after their official term. And Olivia, you might, consider answering that question from your perspective as well.
I guess I'll go first. So the really cool thing about Fayetteville is that after seeing the success of the Fayetteville Cumberland Youth Council, which is geared towards high school students, they still wanted to have a outlet for younger young adults to be able to be involved in civic engagement. And so they came up with a program called Fayetteville Next. It used to be called the Fayetteville Millennial Council, but now it's open to not teenagers, to young adults that may not be in the millennial generation. So now it's Fayetteville Next. And it's geared towards young professionals, young adults in Fayetteville who want to be involved in civic engagement, but also would like to allow teenagers, allow young adults to have an impact in what happens in Fayetteville. So their motto is to live, work, and play in Faye. And they kind of really work towards ensuring that happens by making sure that Fayetteville is an exciting place to be once you graduate high school.
Great, I love that idea. I want to get in a question here from Melissa real quick. She was curious, and this is probably more for Carmen and Tanya, about budget and staffing levels for your programs.
So for us at the City of Gonzales, our budget does include some funding for advisor support, and that's for the entire year. It doesn't include additional in-house staff time. So just for advisor support, and we also provide like a $5,000 stipend, not stipend, but it's a budget that the council can utilize for different opportunities, whether it's gatherings, end of year celebration, etc. And we're constantly looking for additional grants that oftentimes there are folks who are interested in supporting this work. So we've been fortunate to receive some grants, but our advisors contract is about $50,000. So $50,000 for the entire year, but our council meets twice a month as a full council, and then there's a lot of leadership development in between those meetings. So there's helping set up the agendas, there's issues that may arise that we have to work with the young people to troubleshoot. There's, depending on what project they're taking on, there's meetings in between. So there is a lot of leadership development that is connected to the council. And I think, like Olivia said, you want to make sure that it is youth-led, that they're taking the leadership, that they're bringing in their ideas. But especially when you're just starting, and even so though, because they are cycling in and out, structure is important. So, they are representing the city for us and the school district. So we want to make sure they understand certain rules, how things work, etc., who to approach with what. And then I think somebody asked, do they actually have power? Ours do have power, because the 2 or 3 youth commissioners have a role and have a seat at our city council meetings, as well as the school board meetings. And so it's very important that they understand Robert's rules. They understand how city council meetings function, and when to bring up ideas and how that process works. And so there's a lot of that back-end training that needs to happen to prepare them to be ready to speak at every single council meeting, for example. So anyway, it does take a commitment, but it's important, because then it does help them help bring them to a level where they do have equal power with other electeds, and can really represent the broader youth of the community.
Thanks. Tanya, do you want to? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So as far as staffing, my team has myself, one more full-time person, and then one part-time person. Our youth commission is funded from the general fund. While I'm thankful to have a pretty robust budget currently, we started real small. So I started with the city part-time with a very small budget, but as we had wins and we grew, and had more success, we would present to city council and ask for more funding for different things. So it was like a slow progress of growing. Things that our budget are used for are leadership development, training, food, team building, and then travel for our annual retreat, and then 2 conferences for the National League of Cities, and clothing. I don't remember if I mentioned clothing. And then my advice for young people staying involved afterwards, I think one thing as adults is to just keep in mind, like, the biggest piece of this, in my opinion, is relationship building. So young people need a safe space to learn and grow. There are so many opportunities for adults, but they need to have a place where they can come back and say, like, hey, I'm missing this civic engagement piece or this volunteering piece. Can you recommend something for me? And then, we reach out and find other things. And then for young people too, the thing that they say, I always mess it up, but it's not what you know, it's who you know. I think when young people are serving in these capacities on youth commissions, they have the opportunity to meet so many people. And so it's been really cool to see kind of the fruits of the labor now that I've been doing it for so long. Youth commissioners have gone on to be on boards of local nonprofits, and there's youth commissioners that have gone on to work for the city. So just keeping in mind that as you progress through this process, every single person that you meet might potentially play a role in whatever is next, whether it's the opportunity to stay civically engaged or employment.
Great, thank you so much for that. Appreciate you all sharing your insights. Being here with us today. I want to plug a couple of things here before we leave. We talked a lot about not reinventing the wheel and the importance of connections and everything like that. So the National Civic League has a civic engagement practitioners Slack channel, and that sounds very official. It is not. It is anyone who considers themselves doing the work of local community civic engagement. So you don't have to have a fancy title, but if you are interested in and are working to get more people involved, our Slack channel would be a good opportunity for you to plug in. And we also have a youth sub channel, and so we could share resources about youth councils or any other number of items. So I will have included in your follow-up email a link to join that Slack channel. We're really looking to get that up and off the ground and have more people contribute to that. So feel free to ask questions there. Feel free to share resources if you have something that you think would be helpful to a youth engagement coordinator through that channel. And then last but not least, I just want to encourage you all to stay up to date with league happenings. We have a webinar every month. Of course, we have the All-American City Award every year, but please just stay plugged in with us. We'd love to feature you, to share any promising practices that are going on in your communities. And last but not least, just another quick thank you to our 3 speakers. They all have busy schedules and took out time not only to be here with us today, but to plan and preparation for this. So thank you all so much for being here with us. And thank you to the rest of you for spending an hour of your afternoon with us. And with that, I'll let you all go. Thank you so much and have a great day.